Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Luke Renda, and I'm here today with a special guest, Sarah DeHaven. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, everybody.
Sarah offers oracular spiritual counsel for interesting and influential individuals. And I'm going to have her introduce herself, as it's her first time on the show, just to give a little background of who she is and what she offers. And yeah, take it from there, Sarah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, as you said, oracular spiritual counsel, or I like to call existential spiritual counsel, because my gosh, my whole life is all about existence and trying to figure what the heck this all is out. Yeah. So I started out actually. After it was my Saturn return, and it was some people have, we'll say, good Saturn returns where they get rewards for their work and their effort. Mine was probably one of the most difficult Saturn returns anyone could have. I actually had a psychotic break because I was living so antithetically to my natural way of being, trying to, live on the hamster wheel and chase like ideals and accolades and accomplishments that were just somebody else's story and not mine. And so my brain kind of broke. And I realized that the way I was living, my ethics and my morals and values were not at all on point. They weren't in tune with who I was. And so I was actually called from within myself to learn how to meditate and understand my own mind. And I went to Vipassana 10-day silent course. And I did a few of those after that because I learned from that process that I'm not crazy, which I always kind of thought I was because I'm a weird person. Very, very strange person. And very different from most people I knew. And so through that process of being quiet with my own mind, learning how to meditate properly, I started realizing that how my mind worked is, yeah, like I said, I wasn't crazy. I'm actually functioning properly, given everything that led up to where I was at that point. And I just concluded, I can't work a typical job. It never worked for me. I always tried, it just never worked. My life, the way I operate, for instance, alarm clocks give me massive anxiety. I can't sleep, like live on these kinds of schedules. And so I thought, well, I want to find work that actually helps, that is actually doing something helpful, because a lot of the jobs I had too were ethically, like I would side eye them. They were suspicious, like sus, right? Like I worked for call centers, technical support, this kind of stuff for companies, telecoms that just don't give a crap about people. And so, yeah, like I said, I wanted to find work that was actually doing something that was contributing to benefiting humanity. And I learned tarot from a crazy old man in the woods in Santa Cruz who actually really knew his stuff. And I became a busker and worked on the street doing tarot readings for people. From there, I decided to train to learn astrology from the same mentor who taught me tarot. And then I trained with some other mentors to learn some other parts of astrology, like how to hand draw and calculate charts and that kind of stuff. And then I came across evolutionary astrology. And I was warned off of it. I was told by my astrology mentor, the one who was teaching me the more technical side of astrology, like doing the calculations for drawing charts, using ephemeruses and tables of houses and stuff like that, how to make these charts. He's like, stay away from evolutionary astrology. Like, these people are crazy. And I was like, oh, well, then that means I need to go and look and see what this is about. Because when someone warns me off of something, I'm just of the type, I need to know for myself, is that true? And it turned out evolutionary astrology was right up my alley because it focuses on the journey of the soul. It's the kind of astrology that looks into why we're here, how we got here, and what seems to be unfolding in front of ourselves so that we can make wise decisions with regard to how we're developing our soul's journey. And to me, that was straight up where I wanted to go. And so I started focusing on that and studying that. And, you know, I also have for years been looking into what the hell is going on with regard to why the world is so messed up. I mean, even before I even came into a lot of this, even before my Saturn return, I was keenly aware, at least to the limit, that there's so much corruption in this world. And I always had a problem with this. I mean, even at the age of 7, when I heard they wanted to implement the GST, even at 7, I knew something was messed up about taxes, you know? And so it was kind of a long winding road to get to this point. And even now, I'm still reassembling myself, you know, coming into remembrance of who it is I am through very, very, I'll be honest, very diligent and difficult work, you know, of shadow work and really looking honestly at what's going on inside of myself. But through this path, I've been able to help a lot of people. And I guess one of my gifts is, sure, I'm decent. I feel like I'm really good at astrology, quite a good oracle, reading cards and looking into divinatory techniques. Like, I'm pretty good at it. But one of the things I think one of my biggest gifts is being able to accept people for who they are and help them to see who it is that they are is exactly who they're supposed to be, and that they have choices, and that they're literally wired to thrive in this reality. It's just about figuring out how to operate and interface with reality from the very unique way that they would. And so, you know, that's where I'm at. That's a lot of words basically to just say that like I mean, I have 6th house energy, like a lot of 6th house energy. I like to help. I like to clean up messes. And one of the biggest messes I see right now is the state of affairs of humanity. And it's taken thousands of years to get here. And right now, as I'm sure we're going to get into to some extent here in our talk, is we're at a point where we're really shifting out of the dark ages and moving into endless possibilities for prosperity, peace, harmony for everyone. And so I just want to help, and that's where I'm at.
Cool. Very cool. That was a great introduction.
Thanks.
Yes, I feel exactly the same way. Yeah, helping people out with where they are at, because people are at different levels along the journey. And,
yeah,
you know, people can't play catch up overnight. You got to meet them where they are. And that's the only way they're going to hear you out and listen to you, and it's the way you'll be of help. It's funny, I'm the same way with, like, when I was a kid, I just saw nothing but issues. And, you know, people told me, oh, you're young, this and that, you'll figure it out one day. And, you know, like, all the things I was talking about are happening right now, like from the age of 7 to 12 or whatever. I was complaining about all this stuff. And now here it is, it's like rearing its ugly head for everyone to see. And, you know, some people still can't bear to look at it.
Yeah, it's undeniable to anyone who wants to look at reality for what it is, but a lot of people don't want to admit it because, well, various reasons, but I think one of the biggest ones is fear. I know 2006, around there, was when I really realized like what's happening with like the think tanks, the social engineers, these secret societies, and like what they actually do, the evil that they engage in. And I'll be honest with you, like, I was devastated. I cried for hours. Like, it came out of my body. It wasn't even like a mental thing. It was just my body came to realize, oh my God, like, I always knew they were crooked, but this is next level, you know? So when I think about where people are at who are in denial of what's in front of them, I think it's part could be that their subconscious is trying to protect them from the devastation that, you know, when you finally put that connection together.
Yeah, and some people are more invested in the false reality than others, right? Like, for me, it was very difficult as well. Same around the same time, 2006, 2005. I felt like I was the only person in the world who knew about this stuff, and I slowly found, you know, like other thinkers and other novelists and stuff. And writers, and it kind of helped me along the journey, but I was never really invested in that world. And so as ugly and as hardcore as it was like, okay, at least there's other people who are seeing it like me, like I'm not the odd man out.
Yeah.
And for people who are really invested in that false narrative, yeah, I can see why they can't look at it, especially now, because like they're invested and they've just been investing in it more and more. And people who are our age in our 30s and 40s, it's probably pretty tough. What is have I bought a lie? Isn't that what Michael Tessarian always says? It's not that you've been
Yeah.
sold a lie, it's that you've bought one. And that can be, that's the personal responsibility too that's gonna help you change.
Yeah. And then if we think about it, as you say, because the longer this goes on, the more that people are buying this lie, the worse crimes are being committed. I mean, at this point, and I mean, the children have been being abused throughout for some time, more so behind the scenes. This is overt, where people are willingly volunteering their children to, you know, I don't know how much detail is safe to speak about openly, but there's a lot of abuse happening and it's voluntary, and not for the children. A lot of them are being kind of like tricked into thinking that what's happening is okay, indoctrinated into believing it. And so when the penny drops and they realize, like parents in particular, what they've consented to, I can't imagine how devastating that's going to be, but surely it will be.
Yeah, like even just thinking of the average childhood from 20, 30 years ago, there's so much like violence in that, and there's so much abuse in that, just in a normal childhood. You're being dragged here and there, put into these institutions, you're not around any of your parents or any family or anyone who even loves you. That's a normal childhood. So to think about what an abnormal, like abusive childhood would be like, or like these poor kids today being forced to do all kinds of stuff, it's unimaginable, honestly.
Yeah. And yet, at least from what I can tell, it may need to get to an extreme in order for this shifting to really move in a direction where consciousness is evolving, not just for the few that are seeing things, but for the greater, at least a greater and greater number, enough to start shifting the way society is operating. Which, I mean, I'm not trying to be idealistic, but I do think, based on some things that I'm aware of, that there's a strong potential for that to happen, but it might take at least another decade, might even take two. Some people think this might happen overnight, and I hope it does, but I do know how humanity operates, and at least in the sense of it is a very Saturnian thing. It does take time for consciousness to shift. So
it might take half a century.
It could. It really could. Yeah.
It reminds me of that old saying from Vernon Howard. Human condition is so severe that few can bear to look at it, but those who do become well. Or human sickness is so severe that few can bear to look at it, but those who do become well.
100%. That's so true. I mean, that's literally how I was able to heal a lot of the issues I was dealing with. And even to this day, the things that do still crop up from the subconscious into my awareness, it's literally how you deal with it. You look at it, you see it for what it is, so that you can understand it instead of running away from it or trying to pretend it's not there, which can be really difficult to do, incidentally, because of I like to use astrological archetypes to describe these things, but Saturnian force tends to calcify things. And you're aware of the nodes of the moon, right? The north and south nodes of the moon. There's nodes for all the planets. It's one of the things I like about evolutionary astrology. They look at the nodes of Pluto, for instance, and the nodes of Pluto have been, the south node of Pluto has been in Capricorn for geez, like hundreds of years. When I looked into it last time, at least the south node of Saturn too is also in Capricorn. It's been hundreds and hundreds of years. So if we think about how Saturn operates, it does tend to repress, right? And so when we see something that's uncomfortable, especially if we need to function in society, which is another Saturn, descriptor word, keyword, we may repress and repress and repress to the point where it actually starts becoming Pluto subconscious, a subconscious habit. And so it does take effort even to get our body to be willing to release and like relax. Just speaking from my own personal experience as a Capricorn, like a triple Capricorn, I got a lot of Capricorn. It does take effort, but it is worth it. You get better and better and better. Your body starts feeling more and more relaxed, and your mind relaxes too, and your heart even. So it's certainly, I think Vernon Howard might have known what he was talking about there with that one. You see the evidence.
Yeah, there's many great sages who kind of were trying to point the way for us right now, to give us that bit of homework that we can do and to help aid us in these times, because that was one big concern. Like Carl Jung, he was talking in the 50s and saying like, I'm super concerned about this new age that's coming about, and people are not prepared for these unconscious forces that are kind of guiding them, right? And the less you are sort of aware of your own feelings, your own actions and intentions, like the more aware you are, the less these unconscious forces are going to completely take over your life. But if you kind of just give up that, you put yourself on autopilot, it's all the unconscious, like the unconscious is ruling the day. Consciousness is so small. And for a lot of people, we're saying it's barely existent.
Yeah, and a big piece of it is dissociation from the body. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say a big piece of that is dissociation from the body, because on one hand, being conscious, a lot of the time, I think some may think that means you have to think your way into, being focused, but a lot of it comes from bodily awareness and listening to the body, because the body's so intelligent. It has a natural intelligence in it. It's very keenly aware of what is right and what is wrong, at least for ourselves, what our bodies need and what it doesn't need. Yeah, and as we can see, I mean, given the circumstances we're dealing with right now, the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius of last year kind of it's heralding in the oncoming Pluto transit into Aquarius as well. We could even go back into the early 2000s with the conjunction of Uranus in Aquarius and Neptune in Aquarius. That was around the 9/11, a little bit before that. The technological, like internet was starting to become more ubiquitous slowly into society. Well, actually pretty quickly relatively, but I mean, technology seems to be an escape for the sick mind, though at the same time technology can be a benefit to all of us. It can definitely be a place where we end up hiding from ourselves further and further, and it does seem as though there is a strong potential for an attempt to further that, from what I can see with things like Neuralink. Elon Musk's Neuralink is just one example of the types of technologies that are on the horizon. And yeah, I don't really have a major point with that. I just want to say that just to underscore how important the body's intelligence is. This is a time right now with Uranus being in Taurus where we have an opportunity to individuate our unconscious memories of who it is we truly are, to bring those to the surface, to break through the calcification of the Saturnian energies rife within ourselves and in society. But it is uncomfortable. It can be very uncomfortable. And yet that's where the reward is, right? Literally, it's the only way to heal it, from what I can tell, is to look at it.
Yeah, you're not going to pull a sliver out of your foot if it's not bothering you, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, we're seeing like a lot of changes, obviously, in the medical industry. We've seen there's that one side where, there's no natural immunity. Your body can only, it's only the things that we put into it as far as medicines go, that's what builds you up, right? And then there's this whole other thought of like the qigong and the natural path, and yeah, like what you were bringing up, like the Reichian armoring, right? Like the tension that goes right into the fibers of your body, and it's like it's actually, because you were saying, not thinking your way out of it. It's almost like you got to feel your way out of it, like through your body.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of this like unconscious stuff is stored, is like literally in the fibers of your body.
It's true.
There's what do they call it, ralphing and that type of stuff, right, where people are just like working these fibers, because they can be so calcified, like your tendons and your muscles, they can be so calcified that like they turn almost to bone. It's just, yeah, and it's like a consciousness meets physical aspect, right? The psychosomatic. And again, like there's like, it's almost like we're going off on these diverging paths of, there's the people who are into that way of thinking of like, let's do this naturally, we're amazing, like our bodies can like react to things within split seconds, like in real time. It's not like, oh, we got to go develop some medicine and we'll get back to you in a year, and then you know what I mean? It's like your bodies do this stuff in real time. It's so amazing. And I don't know, it's just this natural versus unnatural is what I kind of see coming down the pipe. And I want to talk to you about like the the rulers of Aquarius actually are like Saturn and Uranus. And I kind of see that as like a discipline from Saturn, and then this sort of like technological knowledge, or like the great revolutionary that like Prometheus myth, where he's giving the fire, stealing the fire from the gods and giving it to man. It's like, it's not just the technology, it's like the truth of the elements of like our natural world too, right? Like you can create fire. It's like understanding our natural world and harnessing that, and kind of having the discipline over our technology, rather than having it go completely pear-shaped and like having the technology run things. That's kind of one of my fears of this age of Aquarius, is that we see people now kind of coming online with like, oh, government isn't the best. Like me and you will probably both agree. It's like, hey, we've been talking about this forever. But these people are going to finally realize, and then they're going to go too far. And it's going to be like they're going to create like, oh, well, man is fallible. We're going to create a supercomputer. It will do all of our thinking for us. Like that's kind of like the danger I feel about the coming age. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, it makes complete sense to me. And it's all rooted in what Sarians talked about, the autophobia concept, like just the fear of knowing who we really are. And that one path into that heavy reliance on technology over nature, not finding a balance between the two, that, yeah, I think what you're seeing is highly plausible as far as how that could unfold. And then, as you mentioned, with Saturn and Uranus ruling Aquarius, co-ruling Aquarius, I kind of like that, because when I think about the precession of the zodiac, Capricorn being where we reach self-determination and wisdom and maturity in the ideal setting, where what is calcified into the physical realm, what is manifested into the physical realm, is truly what divinity intended in flesh, in the ideal scenario. So then if we take that and move it into Aquarius, the next sign, the following sign, and Capricorn, being ruled by Saturn, and then the next sign being Aquarius, being ruled by Saturn and Uranus, what we're seeing is the suppleness required, and also the breaking of that calcification, so that new growth can occur, so that we can hand the torch off into the masses, or into the next generation, so that they can take it further, so that we're not holding on to time and trying to stay stuck in one point in time, which is literally impossible. We can only do it by collective insanity, right? If we're coming at this thinking about these energies from a healthy space, we can see a growth of technological advancements that honor nature, that honor the physical realm in a way that doesn't vilify it or see it as broken. Because really what's broken is our perception. That's what the issue is. I honestly think that all human beings in a fully healthy state would be fully self-realized, or maybe not fully self-realized, but self-realized enough that they're not carrying generations of traumas embedded in their body. And then the traumas that they incur over the course of their own life could be dealt with much more efficiently. And then we see in the reality that we're dealing with right now, this is the way Saturn is working. We're seeing benefits to it, but the percentage is very tiny. What we're seeing more so are the malignancies of how Saturn can operate. And I find it very interesting that some of the forces behind the scenes that engineer society venerate the distortions of Saturn. You know, I don't know what you think about that, but it's interesting to see that, because what they're doing is they're literally like retarding how the Aquarian, the following sign, is going to operate, and then subsequently Pisces, and then into the next cycle again, over and over and over.
Yeah, it's like everything that they do is a deformed like aberration, right? And again, it's like a broken clock is right twice a day. With these people, it's not. Like there's never any happy accidents with these people. It's always, wow, that's convenient for them. Like every step of the way, oh, that's convenient for you. You know, it's like there should be a good accident once in a while, I feel like, with these controllers, right? And it's just like, it's always the most malignant that it could be. It's always the most perverted that it could be. You know, that it just doesn't happen by accident in nature. It doesn't happen. It's ridiculous to think that. It's a purpose retarding, like you said, the holding back, right?
Yeah.
Of a natural development. Sorry, what did you say?
I was just saying, it's my favorite word, retarded. It's just like so accurate for what's going on. Anyway, I'm sorry. I got an Aries moon. I do interrupt too much. I apologize. Please go on.
I do that a lot too. So I've been doing good. You can interrupt all you want.
Sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about like the ages now that we've kind of went on this digression a bit. What Liz Green said about like when these ages fall and sort of start up again, it's like they kind of overlap. And it's like the death of one is like the fertilizer for like the next age, you know? And yeah, should we talk about the precession, or we're beyond that maybe now?
No, we could talk about that. Sure, why not? I mean, some people might be wondering about that, so we could touch on it at least. Maybe it's up to you, but I'm happy to talk about it if you'd like to.
Yeah, we could briefly go into just like the symbolism, because what happens with like the precession of the equinoxes is, you know, like the sun moves forward through the zodiac, whereas the precession is every 2,150 some odd years backwards through the zodiac. And so like as far back as like we have records, it was like the age of Taurus, the bull, and there's like everyone worshiped the bull. So what happens is these ages greatly influence like religious symbolism, right? You see it in, and then so when the age of Taurus went to the age of Aries, you have like this Mithraic cult where it's like the image is literally a guy cutting a bull's throat. And then we have all these changes like in ancient Egypt, through like the Hyksos invasion of Egypt. These people, they're literally called the shepherd kings. And that's when we're moving into the age of Aries, right? And these shepherd kings came into Egypt. It kind of caused some turmoil. They were kicked out. This is like, it's like allegorized in the Exodus in the Bible. You know, Moses goes away, so it's kind of entering into the age of Aries, the ram. Moses goes away. This is kind of the story of the golden calf. He comes back, he's all pissed off because his people are back worshiping the golden calf. And he's like, no, like we're a solar cult. The sun has moved into Aries, you know? Then it's moved into Pisces, like the Jesus fish. I always ask people, what's with the Jesus fish? No one knew. But when you get into esoteric knowledge, it's like, oh, Jesus fish, Pisces, end of story. Like it's so simple, this type of stuff. And yeah, that's all I have to say really about precession. People, I think, kind of know what precession is. It's like the moving, it's the great year, the Platonic month is what Plato called it.
Yeah, I actually have a graphic from the Evolutionary Astrology Glossary of the Ages. Would you like me to share it or maybe
Sure.
just talk about it a bit?
Yeah, you can share it. How do I
Oh,
do
it says
this?
I'm mine is
Okay,
disabled
I
here.
think I did it. I'm like the least tech person ever. Like, so I think
Yeah.
this is gonna work.
Oh, right. Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, one sec
Okay.
here. I'll just bring it up.
It's not really that advanced to use Zoom, but I'm so low tech.
That's okay. It's, we learn as we go, right? So,
As long as we
um,
go, I'm learning quickly.
so this is the list of ages. So I just wanted to show people, as you can see, like as far back as 10,900 BC, it was the Leo age. It's many thousands of years, like Luke was saying. The age of Aries between 2260 BC to 100 BC, and all the way up to, well, the Golden Calf age, like you were saying, Taurus, and then into where we're at, the Pisces age, 100 BC to 2060. So that's a projection of time. It's not a hard line, like it's not exactly 2060. It could vary, but clearly we can see with the advent of the turn of our millennium into the year 2000, many indicators that could point to the potential that we are actually in at least the penultimate stages of unfolding into the age of Aquarius. So yeah, I just wanted to show that to people.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is
So
a helpful graph. Yes, we'll look at what happened at the end of the age of Aries and the age of Pisces. It's like the Roman Empire is basically collapsing. There's the Jewish revolt. We have like all these stories of like Jesus and like a whole new religion forming. Like this is the kind of turmoil and stuff that happens at the end of an age, you know?
exactly.
And then like these stories, we know more about those stories than we do about something 1,000 years later, like 500 years later, you know what I mean? Like it's like those points influence the next 2,000 years.
Very much so, because nothing's an island when it comes to this reality. It's all unfolding into its unfolding from itself, I guess we could say. Um, and So it's good to know history, and yet at the same time, our history is so, as much as we do know, there's a lot that we don't at the same time. I think it comes back to the benefits of being tapped into our bodies, because even if we don't have connection to our roots, again, our body does have an intelligence that may not necessarily be conscious. So if we can tap into that, we can still find our way, I feel. And so, honestly, I mean, it's speculation, but I do think that's part of why an effort has been made to devalue the past, to devalue ancestry and things like that. I know myself, I can only pinpoint my ancestry back to my great great grandfather, sorry. And after that, it's very spotty, because my family too, they came on the slave ships to Virginia on my mom's side, and on my dad's side, I couldn't tell you. I just know that they it's Celtic Norse, but it's very spotty, and I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people who are just sort of like, I don't know where I come from, and I don't care. I don't care that much. Or some people really do, because they feel a connection, but they don't know where to begin to find out how to get hard facts on what their origin is. So yeah, it's interesting actually when you think about that and the concept of Pisces, because Pisces energy is very much, I guess it finds its home in something greater, and yet it really wants to connect, you know, and yet it's just such an energy of it's the fish is the energy of the fishes. It's hard to grasp, it's hard to hold on to something. It really is a time where there's almost a benefit in learning how to be okay with the ephemeral nature of things like that, like of time, what was recorded in time. But yeah, I'm just kind of I'm kind of riffing, so I don't know if I made any sense there. Just wanted to share a few things.
I'm always interested into people's like pasts and backgrounds. If I ever meet someone, like I'm basically like ask them about their life to the point where I met them. Like, how did you get here? And then I'll ask like, where did your parents come from? Where did your grandparents come from? It's too funny. I've always been interested in that. For me, I can only go back to like my great grandfather really on either side. And from there, it's kind of, my ancestors have passed on now and kind of, unknown.
Yeah,
I guess we gotta. Oh, sorry. You go.
I was just gonna say, and yet we have access to our ancestral memory at all times, from what I'm understanding and what I'm even learning myself. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, and that's part of it too, which is like your feeling and how you feel about it and what you can sort of intuit. There's so much put on like this scientific, what can you prove? And there was like, I was reading an article a couple years ago and it was about how, like through these mathematical equations, we can prove that like you don't even exist or whatever. But it was like, it's like, I just felt like slapping that guy in the face and being like, you can't deny that I exist. But it's because it's like once in a lifetime experiences, which is like basically your daily life, you can't prove once in a lifetime experiences scientifically. It has to be repeatable. Yeah. And that whole Undiscovered Self series that I did, Jung kind of like he takes the statistical average and completely destroys it. It's like if you treat people like a statistical average, like you're never gonna find this statistical average. That's the illusion, is that there is a statistical average. And he was talking about like measuring the rocks on a beach and then taking the average size of like 2.5 inches or whatever it was. He's like, go out and try and find a 2.5 inch rock though. It's like, you will never find one. It will be so hard to find one because it's like this averaging down, and that's like almost like a cultural Marxist philosophy, is like the averaging down of everyone to like this basic common man or whatever that they're always going on about, and it doesn't exist.
So no, like, it really doesn't. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you got a bit louder, so it's all good.
Oh, let's move back a little bit.
I'll just turn you down a touch.
Yeah.
I have a quote. I have a quote to read.
Oh yes, please do. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I have my mic too close here. I keep bumping it. So here's Jung, and this is what he has to say. The present age must come to terms drastically with the facts as they are, with the absolute opposition that is not only tearing the world asunder politically, but has planted a schism in the human heart. We need to find a way back to the original living spirit, which, because of its ambivalence, is also a mediator and uniter of opposites, an idea that preoccupied the alchemists for many centuries. He has a little footnote here called the spirit of Mercurius, whereas like Mercurius is the uniter of the opposites. And his whole thing in like the age of Aquarius is this opposition between Aquarius and Leo.
Yeah.
It's like the individual versus like the collective. It's kind of the thing that he saw coming down the pipe, and that the individual is the only one that could solve these issues. How does that feel?
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. I mean, it's a paradox that we live in this reality, in the sense that we are all of one family. I believe that all beings, not just humans. But at the same time, for that family to thrive, the individual must be allowed to exist as nature intended. I feel that all of us are a facet of the divine incarnate in flesh. And so for us to be able to authentically express the divine, we cannot be suppressing what it's called to iterate through us. And that's why there's so much variety and beauty, because if we think of us all as facets of the divine, or bands of light, we could say, different frequencies of light, very complex, it's required for the divine to know itself through the allowance of all these different expressions. And some can get into like very, very wishy-washy new agey ways of looking at this and saying, well, even the evil is supposed to be here and there's a role to play there. And I can even see that, but at the same time, there's a slippery slope of sliding into cowardice and just saying, I'll blend in with the crowd and not be what I'm called to be. Maybe some hero will come in and save us, but for now, I'll just blend in. Or just forsaking that altogether, just thinking that it's a better place to be. You know, of course, it's in the subconscious, deeply subconscious fear of standing out, because for survival reasons, it's safer, at least logically, to the mind of the fearful, from what I can tell. It really, really, man, this Uranus and Taurus transit is so on point, I gotta say, because it shows with Taurus, it squares Aquarius. So they kind of have a direct relationship going on, but there's a similarity there in the sense that Taurian energy is about self-sufficiency. Yes, it's about fear. There's fear of survival and wanting to propagate the species embedded in the Taurian energy, but the ideal natural iteration of Taurus is homeostasis, inner peace, and self-sufficiency. And so having Uranus in that sign at this point in time, and then seeing how so many people are choosing to go with the herd, to go with the crowd, and put on the masks and cover up their individual selves, like symbolically but literally in a sense, it speaks so strongly to the decision that we're all being asked to make right now, which is to actualize ourselves, individuate.
Yeah, I've been studying astrology for 5 to 7 years, like off and on. I'm not the most amazing, accurate astrological predictor, but in 2018, I had heard on Unslaved, Glenn Perry is a psychologist, and he was talking about his predictions for the next year of 2020. He was saying, in 2020, this is going to happen. My friend Martin, he's like, we're talking about 2020. We're like, look at these dynamics, like this stuff's going to happen. And what Glenn Perry was saying, like he nailed it perfectly. He's like, oh, you know, Uranus going to Taurus is going to be like changes in money and this and that. And there's going to be sort of like a doubling down of this recession from like 2008. So we're going to be tightening our belts. We're going to want to be more self-sufficient. Money's going to change. You know, Saturn and Jupiter are going to be conjunct. And he like nailed out the whole year of 2020. And that's when I really realized like the power of understanding astrology. And I told everyone I knew. I worked at a bar, and I was like,
yeah,
better start preparing now, 2020, start preparing now, 2020. I told like every person that, so that when 2020 happened, I was hoping one person would remember and be like, hey, Luke, you know, you nailed that 2020. How'd you do that? You know what? No one remembers. It's too funny. It's like, but it was so accurate. And I'm just like an average guy listening to these people and, you know, trying to pick up what they're putting down. But it was so amazingly accurate. You like, other than the whole pandemic aspect of it, everything that was a consequence of that happened. And that's what they were predicting was they didn't know what's causing it, but the consequences they nailed. It's impressive.
Oh yeah, there's no question about it.
No scientist predicted that, you know, and there's probably for a reason they're keeping it hush hush.
Well, I mean, they can have all the empirical data that they want, but if you're not throwing astrology into the mix, you're shooting yourself in the foot. That's just how I see it.
I'm going to read another quote because what you said a few minutes ago, I was just looking at my quotes, and what you were saying was like very similar to this Jung quote. And I won't drag out too many quotes here, but I got a couple.
I love quotes.
Okay.
Please.
Here we go. Oh, the last quote was from Aion as well. This is also from Aion Collective Works, Volume 9, Part 2, just in case anyone watching wants to know. So, if, as seems probable, the Aion and the fishes is ruled by the archetypal motif of the hostile brothers, then the approach of the next Platonic month, namely Aquarius, will constellate the problem of the union of opposites. It will then no longer be possible to write off evil as the mere privation of good. Its real existence will have to be recognized. This problem can be solved neither by philosophy, nor by economics, nor by politics, but only by the individual human being via his experience of the living human spirit.
Yep.
So that real existence of evil, like that's what people have to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, this is actually why I love Asteroid Lucifer so much, because it's literally where you can see where that sneaky bugger is hiding. I mean, obviously it can iterate in other ways, but that asteroid temptation exists to succumb to fear, to take the easy way out, whatever it is, take out, opportunism, whatever it is. But I mean, there's other ways, obviously, you can look at it, but that's like to find where we're out of alignment with goodness. I just really like that asteroid because it speaks to an archetype that is part of evil that is quite significant in the human consciousness.
That's what I love about your videos and your work is like that's kind of one of the things that you focus on a lot is that asteroid Lucifer. And it's kind of cool how everyone comes at things from their own angle. They learn this stuff and then they can kind of, it's like the martial arts or like the Bruce Lee. It's like you learn the punches and the kicks and then you can express it yourself in your own unique way. And that's what I really appreciate about your work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I don't know, like I'm a pretty dark person in general. I mean, I like I was saying leading up to my Saturn return, I mean, I've mentioned this openly, and the reason why I mention it openly is because I want people to understand the state of the situation here. I was raised to be a sociopath. I was raised around sociopaths. My whole community was filled with sociopathic individuals. Like, it sounds like an exaggeration, but it was pretty much the whole neighborhood. At least the people that I went to school with and the people I interacted with, and my family. Did they choose to be that way? No, it was survival. They thought that that was how you get to stay alive and how you get food on the table. At the end of the day, that's what it was, how to get rent paid and that kind of stuff. Mark Passio talks about the concept of secondary psychopathy, where it's not inherent to a person, it's more we could say taught. And from what I can tell, like for me, I mean, I've always been into like finding out secrets and getting to know how people tick. Before my Saturn return, I would use it to my own advantage though, because I thought that's just what was necessary. But now I look at these things because part of me just wants to see through the lie, to know that, because I always thought I was a bad person, that I was just evil, and that things about me, like hatred, made me a bad person. So I like looking at these things because the more you look at them, the more you see what they really are. You get to understand the human condition. You get to understand why people make the choices they do. And in growing that awareness, it helps us to make better choices. And so that's why I feel like part of the situation that's going on the planet right now, so much corruption, but there's a strong repulsion to like when it comes to actually looking at the root causal factors. So I might not be the most popular at Christmas dinner. I might not be, like the kind of person that people really like. I mean, I just go there, but at the same time, that's the answer. It really is. That's, this is why Jung was way ahead of his time, because he understood the benefits of looking into the shadow, understanding the subconscious, and even how all of these archetypes in astrology and other archetypes that he studied, how they all correlate to how our minds are actually woven, how they operate. So I must have haven't read all of his works. I've more like just read his chart and tapped into him psychically. But I must say I very deeply appreciate his contributions.
Because I haven't read near all of his works either, but slowly plugging away.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us who are doing this are very popular at Christmas dinner. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, as long if I'm making pie, you know, and shut up and just make sure that people eat what I cook, then I'm popular. It's when I start talking that it becomes a problem. Anyway.
All that talking gets you in trouble. It's
Yeah.
funny because you say you're like sort of like a dark person, you know, you're always looking into like the darker aspects of humanity and society, but you laugh a lot. I notice you laugh a lot. And
Yeah.
it's like this light-hearted approach to the work that needs to be done, right?
I'd literally go crazy. Like I would have killed myself years ago. I'm not even joking. Like I said, I got a lot of Capricorn, but I like sharing parts of my chart because it helps people see who I am. Like I have a Leo rising, so I have to laugh. If I don't laugh, you know, my North Node's on my rising too. In this life, I'm literally learning to be able to still have fun, which with a lot of Capricorn energy, this can be really difficult to do. But at the same time, one thing I've learned that it makes me so happy to just know that this is true is that the more you can look at the dark and realize what it really is, you can laugh. It's such a relief to be able to laugh at just how ridiculous things are. But not only that, to be able to let go of all of the weight of I believe he talked about the emotional plague. Like when you release a lot of these things, you can laugh. And I don't know,
Is like for me, a lot of the stuff that I find funny can be seen as morbid. And yet, to me, it's just like I said, everyone's here to be who they are. And for me, sometimes morbidity is funny. I would never laugh at the suffering of other people. I don't think that shit's funny at all, pardon my language. But I do
Well, you kind of cut out there for a sec. We have a mic issue. Yeah, I can't hear you again. So that was that Wilhelm Reich that you said was the emotional plague, right? You just cut out there for a second. I caught most of it, and then you cut out again.
Am I okay right now?
Oh yeah, you're okay now. I don't know.
Okay,
what
good.
happened.
Yeah. I was just talking about the emotional plague, the concept of that. You know, Reich really knew what he was talking about. But when you can release the emotional plague by actually like being there with your feelings, accepting too the parts of yourself that you might have decided weren't appropriate. It's for me personally, I don't know. I've always kind of been the type of person to laugh a lot. And I held a lot of that back for a long time because the types of things I think are funny aren't socially appropriate. But you know, like what can I say? Laughter is really healing, and this world is really ridiculous enough that it is kind of funny sometimes. Yeah, I don't know if I'm making my point. I'm trying to express it, but you know, I'm hoping it's getting through on some level.
I'm getting it. Unfortunately, I do. My friend was going through a little divorce, which is like so terrible for him, and it's really emotional. And he's kind of telling me all his problems, and I'm laughing. And I'm like, I got this smile on him, laughing. I'm like, sorry, I'm not laughing at you. It's just so crazy what you're telling me. Like, and he's like, oh, I know. But it's like, I can't help. He's telling me this like horrible story of his divorce and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like ear to ear grinning, laughing as if it was like a stand-up bit. But it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. It's just like, it's so crazy what you're telling me that I have to laugh. Like, so.
Yeah. I actually, this is part of an issue that's happening right now. I mean, one example, one of my favorite comedians is Dave Chappelle. I just always loved that, you know, just how silly he is. He tells a good story too in his stand-up. He's got a Mercury, Leo Mercury, so he's a great storyteller. But it's getting more and more difficult for people to make jokes because of how delicate a lot of people are. And to me, part of what helps a person grow is to not identify with things that can hurt them on an emotional level. The less and less, and then this is not to dispense with compassion. I just want to be clear about that. Like, that's obviously compassion and forgiveness and having empathy for others is very important. These are faculties that are natural to us, like empathy, for instance. It's not about that. It's not about dispensing with our humanity. It's about, I guess we could say, releasing or disposing of anything that would hold us back from being able to fully unfurl into our true self. And part of that is being able to laugh at things, at ourselves and other people. And I mean, like I said, I have a Leo rising. So sometimes, yeah, it might not be so easy for me to laugh at myself, but that is my failing that needs work, right? Like, that's not, like if somebody made a joke at my expense, that's not their issue. I mean, they might have issues to deal with, but my response is my responsibility, literally responsibility, my ability to respond. So I don't know. I just, where I'm at with that is like, with where humanity is going, if we can't laugh, then we're fucked. I'm sorry.
It's part of looking at the self. It's part of looking at the situation, right? You're going to see the humor in it. You're going to see the sorrow in it.
Exactly.
I grew up being depressed, like, oh, I was depressed my whole life. And I'd be like trying to tell my friends who have never even thought about being depressed. They've never even had a bummer day. And they would like, oh, someone would make a joke about like what I was telling them. And it's like, I couldn't help but laugh at how, like, it just kind of made light of my situation, which kind of made me feel better about it. And then
Yeah.
it kind of gives you the strength to move through it.
Yeah. I love that though. That's the thing. A good comedian, or somebody who really uses the gift of landing a joke right, can take something, like you said, like where you're really low, you're really feeling bad, and they can take it and lift you up and make you laugh and move out of that energy without ridiculing you in a way that puts you down. It's a real gift and a talent and a skill to be able to do that. In fact, that's actually a goal of mine, is to be able to do that. I don't know if I'll get it right in this life, but it can't hurt but try. It can't hurt to try. And you also bring up a good point too. There are sorrows in life too. We experience a whole range of a variety of emotions. This is another great thing to bring up too, with the age that we're moving into. On one hand, Aquarius energy can become very dissociated from the emotional body. It's air element energy, right? It's electricity. It's not really, that and water don't go great together in a sense, in certain ways. And yet at the same time, because of its objectivity and scientific mind, it can disconnect or move itself from the outside of a situation and look at it in a way that doesn't have the emotions weighing it down. So when I think about this, and then I think about the north node of Pluto and the north node of Saturn, and kind of like how our souls are developing on a collective level, those energies are in Cancer, and that energy in Aquarius are kind of in conjunct. It does require adjustments, but if we're willing to adjust ourselves so that we can feel and be objective about it, I feel like I just think we can benefit greatly, so that we're not trying to put ourselves into a machine and not feel anymore, or to become too watery and offended by every single thing, and even like so insecure that we can't grow or see a situation for what it really is. Instead, if we can kind of adjust so that we can accept both energies and work with them well, we can grow in emotional intelligence and technologically and intellectually. And yet, from what I can tell, I kind of think that's what we need to do. I feel like our default state is, as a healthy being, is to be able to be like that. Because I just want to wrap up my point here. There's a lot of suffering happening on the planet. I don't want to pretend that's not happening at all. We're lucky in a lot of ways, even though it's difficult here in Canada and it seems to be getting a little bit more hairy these days. We're still very lucky compared to what's happening to a lot of other people on the planet. Some horrible things that I don't even want to describe happening right now. We all know it's happening. So I just want to say that, because on one hand I can laugh at stuff, but I don't want to pretend that like it's not that I don't care. It's just I think that we can do our best when we're true to who we are, and for me that is to laugh a lot. So I just want to be open about that too.
Well, I mean, like you said, we're not very popular at Christmas dinner. I mean, you can't shut me up about all the bad things that are going on, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if I laugh once in a while, forgive me, right? Like, that's the thing. You can't shut me up about this stuff.
Yeah.
But, so we've got to kind of like release that pressure valve too. Otherwise, we'll go into a psychosis.
Oh my God, absolutely.
And I think having astrology as a tool, as my friend Martin says, he's like, the thing is why astrology is so great is because we can look at these things objectively. It's a tool to help us look at it objectively, so we don't get sucked in, right, to this everything being so subjective.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, Aquarius is, that's the sign that rules astrology, apparently. That's what I'm told, It's the stars, I guess. And like there's that Promethean bent to Aquarius, but it's also the god of the sky, right? When we think of Uranian energy too. So, that's the sky beyond the confines of Earth. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too, though, is that we can see all of what's going on, and so it is very, I mean, not all of what's going on, but we can see very much of like the picture, the greater picture of what's happening. People like ourselves who are, for whatever reason, are walking this path where we are exposed to it more than maybe the general populace. And so, to me, like in my own work, like I can see how it can become incredibly depressing. It can definitely become depressing. And what I guess where I'm going with that is that that's also like a trap too, is this whole concept of, oh well, like depression's a bad thing, that you should feel ashamed because you have a proclivity to maybe feel morose or down or despondent or depressed. From what I understand, that's a regular cycle for people with, like, say, Capricorn energy or strong Saturn placements. It's a very regular thing. Part of it is so we can get a perspective that you wouldn't necessarily get if you're always up in the clouds, super happy, riding on unicorns. You know what I mean? Like, it's just because unicorns live in the sky, I guess. But it's all of these emotions that we feel. And I think, like, I know I keep bringing this stuff up, but I feel like emotion is one of the keys to our emancipation, for lack of a better term. I know, at least for myself, I've learned so much just through being able to accept honestly what is coming up in my mind and in my emotions. So I just wanted to say too, like, depression is, I think it's also important. I think there's something important that it has to impart. I wonder what you think about that, Luke.
Well, I was thinking about that Sociopathy and Mark Passio. Did you ever seen that documentary, I Am Fishhead?
Oh no, I've heard of it, but I've never
Okay.
seen it.
Passio brings it up in one of his talks, but what it's about, so it's like, you're talking about depression. Like, depression is a natural human emotion, feeling sad, feeling glum. Like, people want to get away from that so fast through medication or through repression or whatever. It's like, that is actually what makes you sociopathic in a way. Like, you're denying these emotions, right? Like, it's about getting through the depression, not denying it, and essentially the denying it is what has perpetuated all of this stuff so far. Like, I try not to, like, black pill people, because, like, they're gonna just turn a blind eye, but it's like they're turning the blind eye is why this stuff even exists to this day.
Yeah.
But, like, had people in the generation 30, 40, 50 years ago been paying attention to this stuff and dealing with it, it would have mitigated so much of the suffering that we're dealing with right now. But they just kind of put their heads down and just, they were doing what they had to do, and maybe they, because everyone's not ready to, not everyone's on the same point, like, people are at different parts of advancement and people are less evolved. Like that's what I consider it. These people are actually less evolved, where
Yeah.
it's like they maybe don't even have the capacity for those emotions, or don't have the tools. They've never been taught the tools to deal with that type of stuff. And that is kind of what, like, that's why there's so many more sociopaths today than ever with the medications. That whole documentary on Fishhead goes into that. And it's like, just like with the medication, this is like the increase of sociopathy has gone up so much. And it's really from denying negative experiences. They're creating something that's so much worse in the future. It's like damming it up, right? To the point where it's like a little trickle of water going by. When they've dammed it up so much to now the dam has burst. That's where
Yeah.
we're at right now. You know, the dam has burst, and you know, people didn't have their flippers on. They didn't
Yeah.
have their scuba gear ready, you know, and there's going to be a few of us who are like, hey, you know, we're trying to help people, but you told us we were negative. Told us, oh, that's depressing. You know how many times I've heard that in my life? Like, oh, that's too depressing. I don't want to think about it. I'm gonna, you know, do something else. Focus on something that's more positive, right? But that's
Mm.
it's like you're ignoring reality. And when you ignore something, it gives it more power, right? That's
Yeah.
what like Jung said. It's like when you ignore something, it's like you're just giving it more and more power. And then again, then it's projecting onto others, right? It's like you're not dealing with it with yourself, taking responsibility for it. It's like you've repressed it and now you're projecting it on other people. It's insane, really. Like,
Yeah. That's literally what happens, is the projection becomes a thing. It's so true. Yeah. I like when I think about that, it's just I can see why people want to go to feel more positive. Some people have a natural proclivity to be the ones who see the silver lining, live life with rose-colored glasses. And you know, some people aren't. Some people are a mixture. Everyone's so different, and everyone has a place here. That I think what's more important is to just be honest, self-honest. And sure, like I'll admit it's very, you know, beneficial for me sometimes if I'm feeling very sad to throw on some music and dance like an idiot in my living room and just shake it out, you know, like get my body moving. And I don't always choose to do that, but when I do, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the feeling needs to come up and I can't force it away no matter what I do.
that's
Um,
your attempt to exercise it like a demon,
mhm,
right? Like it's not like you're denying it, you're attempting to exercise it out and move your
yeah.
body and feel. Like music helps you feel too. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, you're right. Music is incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. Um, and so yeah, I'll do that just to see if I can, because you know, I mean, like many people here, I'm still reacquainting myself with myself. I know deeply what I am in many ways, but to bring it out so that it's here more and more is part of my work. And so like I said, sometimes I'll just dance like an idiot, and then I'm like, that feeling is not moving at all. Or ecstatic dance, sure, whatever. I will call it idiot dance because that's what I look like when I'm doing it. But that's just me. Anyway, um, sometimes the feeling isn't moving. And that's when I'm like, okay, I just have to be with it. Just be with it and let it do its thing. And sometimes it clears and I feel much better. And then I have more pep and energy to do something that I wanted to do. So I think, yeah, it is important to just be honest in the moment, do our best, take good care of ourselves, be a good mom to ourselves, be a good dad to ourselves, these kinds of things.
Well, and what you're saying about like some people like to stay positive all the time, that is fine if you're like looking for a positive solution to the situation. If you're just
Sure.
denying the situation to stay positive, that's like neurotic, in my
Yeah.
opinion. It's like I know lots of people who are super positive, but they're like focusing on positive solutions, positive actions that they can take to improve the situation, not deny the reality of what is going on. And that is a
Mhm.
big difference, right?
Oh, huge, 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 huge difference. And like you said earlier, that's where the projection and even like we could say leakage comes out, where there's like neurotic leakage that comes out in our actions and even like our perception of what reality is you know, and these kinds of things. Speaking from personal experience, like I know this all too well. And so yeah, like, yeah, of course, looking towards positive solutions is very important. Part of the work I engage in, and it's proven itself very valuable, is this is why it's so important for us to tap into our own divinity by being very honest with what's going on inside of ourselves, because we will get the dictates from within as to how to best interface if we're sincere. It's our sincerity and our volition that will help us find the right path for us, and what positive and negative looks like for us is going to be very unique to us. Not everyone's going to define it as positive. Not everyone's going to define it as whatever, but it's not about their definitions, right? It's about, do we feel right with the world? Do we feel right with ourselves? That's the most important thing. And also the trust too, that you can actually find all the solutions you need to navigate this reality straight from inside of yourself, you know? Astrology is an enhancement. I love astrology for various reasons, but I don't think it's necessary as much as I love it.
Yeah, it's that inner trust. And yeah, like I'm at the point now where it's like things in the outside world will obviously have an effect on me, but I don't get like that doom and gloom that, like, when I relate certain like topics or subjects to other people, they're like, oh, this is so, you can just like see them, they're like, oh my God, the world is over. Like basically, and it's like, no, that's not what it is. Like, this is just the situation you're in. You got to deal with it. There's a saying from the book, the Hagakure, it's a samurai, a book written by a samurai in the late 1600s. And he has a saying where he says, if you're resolved from the beginning, you will not be perplexed. When you're caught in a sudden rainstorm, ducking beneath the eaves of houses, you will still get the same soaking. And he says this extends to all things. So it's like, I've always thought about that, like if you're resolved in like where you stand, like if you're centered in yourself, whatever is happening in the outside world is not going to tear you asunder. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the best, some of the stuff that's going on, but it's like, it's not going to unseat me so much that I lose my shit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, I mean, we see the changes every day, you know, it literally in the weather, like is it sunny, is it rainy, and how we respond to that really is dependent on our own disposition and other various factors. More significant influences on us though are literally the weather. And I was just talking about this in a video today too, that, you know, these think tanks and social engineers, they're ancient psychologists. They understand human psychology. They know more about human psychology than we're catching up in a lot of ways. Some things they don't know that we have access to based on our volition and sincerity to align with I would say, you know, more divine frequencies of energy. So we do know some things that they don't, but we're playing catch up in a lot of ways as to the lower frequency ways of manipulating individuals, like fear-based manipulations. And so having awareness of the vicissitudes of the cosmic tides has paid off in like just like so much with regard to hurting people in specific directions. And yet, as you said, and you know, it just makes sense that the greater awareness that we cultivate in ourselves, the less effective those types of tactics are, less and less and less. And it requires us to just look. All we need to do is look inside and not be and be unwavering in our willingness to look. It's that simple. It's super scary at first. Like when I went to my first 10-day silent Vipassana meditation, I was scared that I was going to go crazy, that I was going to break my brain even further, and that I was unfixable, because I honestly didn't even understand what was going on inside my head until I got quiet and listened for 10 days, which was just insane when you think about it. And yet I loved it. I came back 2 more times and did it again and again, because I see it as actually like maintenance for the mind. But yeah, like where I'm going with this is is just like, if we look and listen, we can learn so much. And we can learn that what we're afraid of is actually, in most cases, and I won't say all, but in most cases, it's massively blown out of proportion based on our imagination.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's like these issues with the self, like, you know, it's like, oh, I've had so many problems, like I can't even fix myself. But my problems are so great, I can't fix myself. I might as well take my own life and like start over, because, and then it's like, wait a second. You start focusing, sure, the problems are difficult, and then, you know, like a couple of weeks later, it's like, if you've actually focused and dealt with someone, it's like, oh, they're not these issues that's like our Mount Everest, you know. It's like that you made a mountain out of a molehill, but it's like, you just, you know, inside you feel like, oh my God, I don't think I can overcome this.
Yeah.
But if you just trust in yourself and do the work and listen, like you said, you're just listening to that still small voice within you, right? It's going to give you the right guidance. It's going to tell you the things that you need to get past it, right? And there's, you know, some problems are worse than others, but there's always a solution lurking there if you can just be patient, stay calm, find that center point, you know, and like the guidance is there for you, and no problem can't be fixed.
Yeah, I'd even say there's multiple solutions, like multiple solutions to the problems. If we think about quantum physics and the field of possibility and probability that we're coming to see is more than likely a significant factor in how reality unfolds and what manifests into the physical realm. If we think about that, we can see how I feel, at least, the more awareness that we build, the better off we are with regard to what kind of realities unfold for us. Because if we're focused, say we're highly ruled by the subconscious, without awareness of the subconscious, of programs, of traumas, or whatever it is, and we're largely being swayed by that, there's going to be a proclivity to repeat things over and over and over again, and to dig ruts that don't get us out of or expand our mind, expand our awareness, expand our possibilities. This is why I feel like humanity keeps going to the same solutions over and over again to fix a problem, and it doesn't actually fix it. It all goes back again to the individual, right? Like this is part of why the individual is so important, is because if individuals are able to express themselves as they naturally are, to create, to engage in creative activities as they naturally would, more and more genius, more and more solutions would amount, and breakthroughs, many breakthroughs, so many breakthroughs, it's almost unfathomable. Everyone has access to this. When I think about how swayed by emotions people are, how powerfully locked in they are, I just think that's a lot of power inside of them too. When you think about it, that's being well co-opted, you know, rescinded, relinquished, that they all have access to at all times. So if we look at the quantum field of possibility and probability from a space of being able to be centered, like you said, no matter what's kind of coming up, and have that sincerity of volition to tap into that voice within us that knows the truth, we can't go wrong in most cases, I would think. You know, we really can't. I feel as though the trust in that and being able to execute its commands, for lack of a better term, I feel like the people would surprise themselves at how self-sufficient and self-reliant, like how self-sufficient they could be, and how much self-reliance they could cultivate within. Yeah, it's just, I get it. I get the fear. I get the fear of looking, but my gosh, would people surprise themselves if they'd only look? You know?
Also, that freedom to make a mistake, you can be like, oh, hey, I tried this, it didn't work.
Yeah.
I have the freedom to try something else, right? It's not like, oh, I tried this one thing and I'm just going to keep doing this one thing like that. Someone was kind of like, this is kind of a little side tangent, but like someone was talking about that with like the medical tyranny we're going through, like here, say like in a free market situation versus like a socialist situation. It's like you have one option on one end, and in the free market situation, you have a myriad of options that you get to choose from. And if that doesn't work, you get to choose another one. Here, it's like, we only have this one option for you, whether it works or not. No, that's like that lack of like the freedom to make mistakes and then to correct it, to correct your mistakes. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Actually, I was thinking about Bruce Lipton too, and his concept of what does he call it? Epigenetics. He's been stating that, and I think, you know, he's got something, there's something to his theories that if, you know, if we're allowed to kind of just like trust ourselves, make mistakes, and just kind of approach it from a space of, you're not locked into your ancestry, you're not locked into your genes, you're not locked into the rules we've been taught as far as how reality operates. We have access to growth that doesn't stop at 25, doesn't stop at 30. You know, we can continue to grow and expand well beyond like our prime years and continue to flourish in ways that are only limited to our imagination. In a lot of ways, theoretically, it's very possible that we could tap into quote unquote superpowers that are really just potentials that are latent inside of ourselves. So like when I think about that, spontaneous healing is one of those potentials, you know, being able to heal ourselves.
Spontaneous evolution is one of his books.
That too.
But
Oh,
it's
is that a book you said?
That's one of his books, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
The
that.
Biology of Belief is one of them. I think Spontaneous Evolution is another. That guy is so amazing and so empowering. It's another thing like I thought about when reading The Biology of Belief was like, just the average age of life. Like being like, oh, you know, the average age of life is like 72 or whatever. It's like just thinking that in your head from like when you were born, like, oh, most people die when they're like in their 70s or 80s or 60s. It's like, rather than thinking, oh, it's quite possible to live to 200. Why isn't that possible? There's no reason why our cells shouldn't be regenerating. And it's just that thought of like, oh, this is like basically like my grandfather died at this age, my father died, oh, so I'm probably going to die at this age. And what Bruce Lipton says is like, your genetics don't matter.
Yeah.
It's like your genetics don't matter. There is no genetic disease. So the only reason it seems genetic is because you're doing the same things your parents did.
Yeah, building that rut.
Building that rut, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like when to link it to this unfolding age of Aquarius and potentials, just think of like I like to think of the potentials of what we can create from this. You know, what we can create for ourselves and what we can impart to whoever's open to hearing it, and then maybe taking that baton and going even further with it. The collaborative potentials with all of this. I mean, the technologies are just waiting to be discovered in a lot of ways. And so, I mean, it could very well be a rocky road, but as I was saying about like the quantum field of potentials and possibilities, if we look to see that that potential exists, the more we look, we can bring it into reality. I don't want to like completely rely on that to the detriment of what's actually happening here in the reality that's around us, which is that is a thing for some people. They would prefer to just imagine and not be in reality. But I think harmony in both can be very beneficial to us and can help us to be open to being inspired ourselves with ways that could contribute to benefit all of ourselves, not just like our own individual life, but everyone, through just a spontaneous inspiration that comes from the ether, so to speak, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be some grandiose gesture. It could be a poem, a song. It could be just a new way of growing vegetables that you figured out that works for you, that ends up, contributing to the amassing of understandings of how to work with permacultures or whatever. I mean, like there's just so many possibilities. I couldn't say them all here, but I get excited about stuff like that because those are things we're also seeing in this reality right now too, are people who are tapped into their creativity and coming up with some amazing technologies that exemplify the greater potentials of the transits that we're seeing.
And a lot, like usually the problem is complex and the solution is simple.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
people that are creating food forests and permaculture and bringing it back to themselves, like now, because they realize, oh, the world is not really as reliable as I once thought. Now I'm gonna have to take a little more responsibility. I'm gonna have to, not just trust the plan, so to speak. It's
Yeah.
like we gotta have to do it on our own, and it doesn't have to be like some crazy complex thing. Yeah, like that's why I'm doing this. That's why I like write poetry and stuff like that. It's like I was listening to this guy and he's like, oh, what are you doing to prepare? It was Michael Wan. What are you doing to prepare for like, the apocalypse? He's like, oh, I'm making walking sticks and hope that like this, when I need it, this walking stick, I'll be walking where I need to go. Like other people are like bunkering up. This guy's creating walking sticks. It's like, it's just whatever way you're going to deal with it. Yeah, just trust yourself. The solutions are, and that's the thing, like the solutions are everywhere. It's like we only have a couple of problems here and there, but there's so many solutions, but they're just, people have kind of been, like railroaded into this one narrow track where they're not really thinking out of the box.
Yeah,
And that's all
which
it's
is
gonna take.
that's a very Aquarian, way of looking at things too, is outside of the box, outside of that black Saturnian cube. It's the next step, right? Yeah. Outside of the box thinking is what's going to get us moving on a good track. I mean, yes, I some people will speak of climate change and say that it's not real, like global warming, damn, but I don't even like these friggin' terms, because they're all created terms to just get people repeating it into the collective's, belief systems. But I like, if we look around, we're not treating the planet super great. That's true. We can all kind of agree to that. But
Always room for improvement.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's where I'm going with it, right? It's just that we can improve, and it's okay that we're making mistakes at the same time. A lot of us, pretty much all of us, unless you're a fully self-realized being like a Jesus figure or a Buddha or something, we're all kind of still kids in a lot of ways. And would we treat kids horribly for every mistake that they make? Ideally, I would hope not. Sometimes we can lose our patience with ourselves and with children and other people, for sure. But that's why I feel like forgiveness is important. Yeah, it's
losing my patience.
yeah, I mean, I do too, right? Like I do too. It's just because I think when you have an ideal in your mind and you know what's possible, if we can get disappointed in ourselves or other people, and like that's okay too. Again, it's the being honest with ourselves with what's coming up. But at the same time, I do think it's important for us to know too, we're not perfect. It's okay. As long as we're putting effort in and being sincere in that effort, I think that's the most important thing.
Well, and like you were saying before, it's like we're still trying to dig ourselves out of this hole that our whole childhood put us in. And you know what I mean? Like we're still dealing with that stuff that's coming up like now.
Yeah.
Like I have 2 young kids, and it's like I see that being reflected back to me. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is where like my issue. You can like my kids will like be a mirror for me. It's just like how like when you're in a relationship, it'll be a mirror kind of back to you in a way, right? And it's like with your kids, it's like literally a mirror.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of see like, yeah, and it's like they're bringing stuff up to me that's causing like a complex to be triggered because of something that happened to me when I was his age. And like, you're not even really understanding that type of stuff, right? And it's like we're all just trying to do the best we can. And it wasn't easy. That's what I'm hoping, to make it easier for my kids to not have to like do so much like unearthing of themselves,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're lucky. They're lucky. I just want to say, yeah. Sorry, please go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, this child psychologist Alice Miller, she wrote a book called Breaking Down the Wall of Silence, and she just like described it as like ever since we were like a little kid, like this little kid that we were, it's like we just built like brick walls around it, and it's like now that we have the capabilities to sort of deal with the stuff, we can slowly take those bricks down so that child's voice can be heard again.
Yeah. Yeah. And that effort, I think, does get passed on. That effort is a significant contribution. I mean, I don't know what your parents were like, but mine definitely had no idea about a lot, like psychologically, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they didn't understand a lot of these things. So I mean, like I said, with the psychopathy thing, you know, the sociopathic behavior was not, I think if they knew the implications, like really understood the implications on a soul and spirit level, they wouldn't have made the choices they did. It was more about survival. So
Yeah.
it's, this is one of the benefits of where we're at as a species right now, because a lot more people, thanks to things like the internet, having access to so much information, a lot of people are starting to learn more and more about who it is they are. And even with astrology being very kind of pop culture still in a lot of ways, not as many people are deeply diving into it, but it's a door that's opened in a way that it might not have been in past decades. It's becoming less and less superficial. I mean, it's still superficial in a lot of ways, I won't lie, in the pop side of astrology, but people are starting to learn more about themselves and finding a genuine interest in wanting to understand who it is they are. I think it goes into what you were saying about the opposition between Aquarius and Leo. Like people are wanting to know what makes them special. I think that even if a person is depressed or a person might have low self-esteem, there's a part of them inside that knows they're special. That there's a reason why they're here, even if they're confounded by, you know, whatever, trying to figure out what that is. And so, you know, like where we're at right now, sure, there's room for self-indulgence and becoming like completely narcissistic, but I do think that there's a lot of benefits to where we're at this stage in the game, and we can hand that off to not just our children, but to all the people we're interacting with, which is a lesson I'm learning too, because sometimes I lose patience with just, you know, certain things that we're being asked to do right now, and everyone's kind of buying into it, and I'm just like, you're literally trying to cause harm to other people so you can feel safe, which is super messed up. And so I try not to get too angry, but you know, I mean, sometimes I do lose my patience with people.
Yeah. I want you to wear a winter coat so I don't freeze.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Right?
Right?
You're
I'm just like,
right.
come on, dude, logic.
It's retarded.
Yeah, it really is. And yet, so like when I think about John Baines, he's a hermeticist who wrote the books Stellar Man and the Secret Science. And one of the things that he wrote in, I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been Stellar Man. It might have been Secret Science. Either way, both good books are great, so I recommend them. But he says that when you come to certain knowledge and you move out of a somnambulic state, I think if I'm pronouncing that correctly, where you're in sleep, when you start awakening to reality and understanding the potential of what humans really are, there can be a need to not try to save people. He actually advises against it. The whole pearls before swine thing, I guess, right? And that makes a lot of sense. And yet at the same time, I think invariably by us actualizing ourselves, the effect of our auric field, for lack of a better term, has a subtle effect on people. So we don't have to become the villain that we're trying to deal with, you know? I don't know why I felt called to share that. I just did. And I don't know if it helps anyone, but I just wanted to say that because that's something I know that I'm dealing with myself. Like I said, a lot of Capricorn energy. I got Mercury, Venus, and the Sun in Capricorn. And like, it's just, you know, as far as who I am, I can be a little militant. So I just want to say, like, even though I help people for a living and I have a lot of skills with what I do, I'm also a human and I'm really fallible too, right? Like I'm still figuring out a lot of things. It brings it back to the whole forgiveness concept, I suppose. But yeah.
Well, the self-improvement thing, it's like no one can blame you for trying to improve yourself. I guess some people can, but it's like that's how you change the world. Like that's a lot what Jung said. He's like, you know, one of his quotes is, "A million zeros will never add up to a single whole." But if the individual is improving himself, that's what's changing the world.
Yeah.
Like going around trying to change others, it's like, no, just change yourself. That's the change you need to make in the world, is yourself and, you know, your family around you or whoever, right? But changing yourself is the only thing you can do, really. That's where the real battle lies, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Well, with where Pluto's going, I just wanted to say, Pluto will be moving into Aquarius around 2025. Might be dipping in 2024, but I think it's fully in by 2025 into Aquarius. And on a soul level, we're going to be called in a lot of ways to make a choice between conforming and being part of the group, or allowing ourselves to develop what our soul truly desires, which for a good significant portion of us will be to express ourselves as we are as an individual. So I think some people might be feeling that pressure now, given all the kind of like the pressure coming in from the outside, and then feeling kind of backed up against a wall as Capricorn, Pluto goes through the last degrees of Capricorn. It can feel very precarious. But when we go into Pluto and Aquarius, I think that call will become stronger for a lot of people. So it'll be an interesting time for sure. At the very least, it'll be interesting.
So the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was February 1778.
Yeah.
So that's like right after the American Revolution starts. The French Revolution starts in 1789. And so, like, you know, maybe it was co-opted back then, you know, like these, I don't know. But I had a few dates. I wanted to ask you a few things, like Jupiter moving into Pisces.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be a conjunction with Neptune. I was really excited for Jupiter in Pisces because it's in my 10th house, and I got MC and Mars and Venus and this trine with all of this other stuff in my chart. And I was really feeling like Pluto was sitting in 22 degrees Capricorn, which is right where my Jupiter is, for a year. Just sat there. And then Jupiter was squaring my natal Pluto. And I was just like, holy, I could just feel this pressure. And then it kind of just started moving into like Pisces. And I was like, oh, I feel so good. These projects I'm doing are like finally coming to fruition. But then I started looking, and I was thinking so positively about Jupiter in Pisces. But then I started thinking like, oh, okay, so what's going to happen with other people with this conjunction of the Jupiter, Neptune in March? There's a new moon, March 2nd or 3rd. And then there's an exact conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune at April 9th. Do you have any comments on that? And we can kind of move towards a goalpost here with this talk.
Yeah. I think that so they're both ruling Pisces, Neptune and Jupiter. Jupiter being the original ruler, the traditional ruler of Pisces. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, of course, too. It's water energy, so it's highly absorbent, highly psychic, highly empathic. It is a kind of energy where the imagination can literally create in the physical realm. It has potentially the most powerful power to tap into the imagination and effectively do so for good or ill. With the conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune, I feel like there's a strong potential for the sincere to tap even more deeply into their divine self and awareness of that. But at the same time, there's also a potential for a massive disillusionments, becoming way too idealistic, and losing touch with reality. So it's a time where I almost see it as like what vision comes to mind as we talk about this is someone in an airplane during turbulence, and the pilot trying to keep the airplane stable through the turbulence. Because although you might not necessarily feel it physically, you might. This is more psychic, energetic turbulence, and so the way to navigate it is, interestingly enough, Pisces rules the feet, to keep your feet on the ground during this time, to make sure you're tapped into your feet so that you can stay rooted, but not so much so that you lose the benefits of Pisces energy. I can't speak to exactly what's going to happen. I know we're still dealing with like the Uranus Saturn square, and there's a lot of issues with resources. It's a closing square between Uranus and Saturn too. So Saturn's closing its cycle with Uranus. That means the archetypes that align with Saturn are not going to want to let go, because it's the end. When we're moving towards the end of this cycle, they're not going to want to let go of what it is they initiated at the beginning of that cycle, which was back in the 60s. Was it in the 60s? No. Sorry, I'm thinking of Pluto Uranus, sorry. Whenever that conjunction was. The point is that these ripple out into Aeons back. So these forces that aim to control reality, in a lot of ways, they work through people. So sorry, I'm trying to articulate this, but my point is the way they work through people is through things like fear. And so this can increase fear. It can increase the imagination running wild with relation to fears with regard to the scarcity situation, supply chain issues, anything that looks like the sky is falling. People might run away with that. And so that's why it's important to keep our feet on the ground during this. And even if we have incredible ideas and visions for the future, since it is a closing cycle that's happening with Jupiter and Neptune, what we want to do is we're kind of preparing for what's to come in the not too distant future, because Jupiter will spend a little bit of time in Aries too this year, and then dip back into Pisces and then go back into Aries. So when it dips into Aries, we want to be careful about thoughtless action, because Jupiter does expand. It can get kind of like inflated. So what I would just say to this is I don't like making predictions about what exactly is going to happen because of that whole field of possibility and probability. I like to trust that things will unfold as long as we stay aligned to our inner self and be tapped into that and in tune with that as much as possible. So what I advise when I see this is, just as I was saying, feet on the ground, remember to stay in your body, and allow yourself to enjoy what comes up, allow the creativity to flow, and also just be aware that any disillusionments that may arise as a result of feeling idealism and visions of the future that are just so beautiful that you want to touch them. You might be able to, but if you can't, if you do feel disillusionment, or if your bubble is burst, be with that too, because those feelings help bring us closer to the truth. So that's what I would say about that.
Beautiful. That's a good point about Pisces being the feet, because yes, the way I thought about it, I was like, oh, it's going to be so expansive and creative, and people are going to be like spiritually getting like their head in the game, and then I kind of started thinking about like the negative side, and I just imagine the Jupiter Neptune conjunction being like some people doing this, like this spiritual practice, doing their art, whatever. And then I imagine the other people, like you say, it could cause more fear, the inflation of that. And I just imagine like people with like VR headsets on and like garbage on their floor around them, and the paint is like peeling off the walls, and they're like, I'm just going and I'm gonna just like go into a fantasy world. So I was really positive about it, and then I thought more about it, and I was like, ooh, this sort of disillusionment and this like non-reality fantasy kind of thing is something to keep an eye on too.
For sure. Pisces is the most sensitive sign in the zodiac. It has no skin, if you think about it. It absorbs everything. So because it is so sensitive, the pain can be very intense. So the desire to get away from the pain, no matter what, can I get away from this pain? Can I just sink into feelings of pleasure, dreams, anything that can get me away from the pain? It might not always be a conscious thought, but that can happen with Pisces, because it has collected everything from the whole precession from Aries all the way through. It has the most potential to touch God, and yet to be able to do that, it can feel like it's not possible. There's so many things with Pisces energy, because it really does have, it's arguably the most powerful sign in the zodiac, but it requires some of the greatest sacrifices to tap into that power in the most pure way. So avoidance of reality can totally be a thing, like you said with the VR headset. Like, oh, is it any coincidence that Facebook has been pushing Meta Like I'm just saying, like these guys know astrology, but
Got the timing down.
yeah, they're getting ready, right? Because we're moving into Aquarius with Pluto, and then Gemini, Uranus, and blah blah. You know, like before everything goes into the water signs, when Pluto goes into water, right? Really trying to hedge the bets to get people to say, I want to get the fuck out of my body. The body is a cage, right? Pardon my language. But I can kind of see that ramping up as a potential. But yet at the same time, like you did mention something important. Like there could be incredible inspirations of oh my God, I am something more. Like inklings or maybe even full-on experiences that are undeniable of someone's divinity can happen during this transit too. So it's just the feet on the ground thing's important too, so that we can really pull that through into the physical realm instead of keeping it up in the ethers, right? That's just my perspective on it. Of course, it's going to unfold in many different ways, potentially. Yeah.
I know you gotta go. I have like one or two more comments.
Sure.
You're cool. That?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember I mentioned that Glenn Perry guy that was on Unslaved?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things he mentioned was like when Pluto first went into Capricorn, it's like that's when like the governments, we started kind of seeing like these whole structures collapsing. We saw Obama for who he really was. I kind of saw who he was right away. I just looked at his cabinet, but it was like hope and change. And then it was like, oh, this guy's just doing the same thing as everyone else.
Yeah.
The whole thing started collapsing. There's a silver lining with this age of Aquarius is that like Pluto's going to be right in there. So any of the fears we have about like it being like overly collectivized, I think when Pluto gets in there, it's gonna shake it up. That's a silver lining I see.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Because Pluto does, I mean, being what it is, it does want to pull the crap up from the bottom of the ocean, bring it up to the surface and be like, here it is. Now let's trash it. Like, let's get rid of this. This needs to go. That's one of the biggest, I would say a key significant function of Pluto energy is to dispense with impurities so that the alchemical wedding can occur, right? That's the whole point. I would think that we would want to derive benefits from, being the types of people that we are, and likely many of the people that would be listening to this. That is the benefit of Pluto. We look through the fear so that we can purify the impurities and use that to, you know, the lead into gold thing, that whole thing. So yeah, I agree with you. It's shaking things up, especially interestingly, like since Uranus is in, they're in complementary elements all through a lot of these transits. So yeah, that can work to amplify that energy in a sense, I would think, potentially at least. So yeah, I mean, I like Pluto. Pluto's a significant planet in my chart too. So as much as it can be scary, it's useful.
I'm down with it. It's like, you know, he's like the Lord of Hell in like the Greek myths, right? It's like Hades, but it's like I see him as like the home inspector. He comes in and it's like, oh yeah, everything's looking good. He's like, what's this shit? Like skeletons are pouring out of the closet and he's lifting up your rug. You just sucked all the dirt under here. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So it's like that's what I kind of see about Pluto. It's like, oh, you said you clean, but you really, he's like the psychological home inspector.
Exactly. He's like, you got to do something with these lead pipes.
You put your dishes in the dishwasher. You didn't turn it on. You didn't do the dishes. You know. Well, thanks for so much for coming on, Sarah.
Yeah.
I knew we would have a good chat. I knew Walter Russell, he says this thing, like in a violin store, like when all like the violins are in tune, you pluck one of the strings, all the other violins in the store that are tuned properly, that string will start vibrating, you know. And this is like I've always vibed with your work, and it's like, you know, when some people don't vibe, it's like, oh, they just like don't get it. It's like they're like the untuned strings. That's what I see. It's like there's nothing I can do to move them. So, you know, but I feel like people who are sort of like tuned the same way as me and who are just I can sense that right off the bat. And so I'm really glad you came on and shared with us today. We almost had an entire digression episode. We talked about some stuff and I said, oh, we might get into some digressions, but I think that's great. That's what I like to do. I just want to have a conversation, and I think there's a lot of information in here. that people will enjoy and get a lot out of. So
Oh, well, I hope so. Yeah. Like, I apologize. It's just like once you get on a roll, I can't help myself sometimes.
sometimes there's no going back.
Yeah.
Right? It's all good. I think it went well, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, for sure, Luke. Thanks for inviting me. Like you said, you had a feeling. I just had a feeling we'd have a great conversation too, and I really feel like we had a chance to tap into some really good information that I hope everyone that listens to this will get benefits from.
I think they will for sure.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks so much. See you, everybody. Hope you
Bye.
enjoyed. Oh, hey, before we go, give your website and your channel and
Oh.
stuff like that. Plug yourself.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my website is adeptguidance.com. That's where you can go to request a reading. In the coming weeks and months, I'll be adding more content. I'm focusing on self-study courses for people so that they can learn astrology, because as much as someone like myself who is an astrologer can assist you in understanding your chart, I feel like people can know themselves on a level that obviously I can't. And so I am focusing on putting out some teaching materials to empower people. So keep an eye out on for that on adeptguidance.com, and articles and things. I'm planning on putting those things out. So if I can light a fire under my butt, I will do that. Let's hope for the Jupiter Aries transit will help me with that. Anyway, you can also check out my YouTube channel, which is also Adept Guidance, and I periodically upload content to that. There's one other thing too I just want to mention, there's a Kickstarter campaign for Stormy Grace's YouTube Academy, which is astrology for all people. We're trying to bring out high level quality astrology content consolidated into one place. So if you want to check out her Kickstarter campaign, I'll give Luke the link if you don't mind putting it in, and you can back that. We got about 14 days to go. And yeah, so I just want to share that one too.
Cool. Yeah, I caught your video this morning. I'm totally going to kickstart it, and I'm totally want to be a part of your self-study group.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, stay tuned.
Okay, cool. See you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed.
Bye.